Welcome to the Kitchen Sink University. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and I figured with all this COVID-19 stuff going on, it's time to talk about.
Prepping for a pandemic.
Okay. What I mean to say is prepping for a pandemic. Okay, let's get into it. All right, first off, I should address the elephant in the room. If you aren't already prepared, it's probably a little too late. Not that you won't be able to source the supplies you may need, but it'll be a lot more difficult and expensive in times of trouble than when things are calm. So, this is more like advice for the future, I guess, although some of it may still apply to current circumstances. And this doesn't just apply to pandemics, but really any emergency situation. As usual, I'll be approaching it from a simple, low cost perspective. Prepping can be done even on a modest budget if you're thoughtful about it. So I'll begin with my own preparedness philosophy and how I decide what I need and how much to get of it. I begin with the assumption that there will be no services for a period of time, say like a month. No stores, no utilities, no police, and hell, even no government. Just you and your loved ones against an awful disaster. You might be trapped in your house for the duration, or in a pandemic, you may not want to come out. People commonly use the term zombie apocalypse. And while that's mostly meant tongue in cheek, it represents the worst case scenario, sort of a target level of preparedness. If you can weather the zombies, you can survive almost anything. So, what should you have? Well, what do you consume in a month's time? Think about that very carefully. Maybe track your use and expenditures uh, for a little while and create a list. Things like clean water, vital medicines, soap and disinfectants, toilet paper, paper towels, gloves, etc., should be first on your list. Notice I didn't mention food. While it's commonly the first thing people think about in an emergency situation, you can actually survive for quite a while without food. You might even be able to go the entire time without needing to eat. And consuming less, you need less toilet paper at that point. Though, if you're exerting yourself physically or battling a disease, a little extra nourishment couldn't hurt. It's also a great morale booster. Maybe have a small supply of non perishable food on hand, but don't go nuts. Speaking of morale, make sure you have something to keep you entertained: books, games, whatever. Your mental state during a crisis will affect your chances of survival as much as the supplies you have. Along those lines, physical fitness is also important. You don't need to strive to be some kind of super athlete, but being moderately healthy before a pandemic can improve your odds of survival greatly. So, what about PPE, personal protective equipment? Well, unless you're wandering around in a hot zone or handling the sick and the dead, you probably won't need much. As long as everyone's healthy in your residence, a simple hand washing and surface cleaning regimen will suffice. If you're dealing with something like a nuclear disaster, the requirements will obviously be different. But that's another episode. If you do have to go out, wear disposable gloves that you can discard before entering the house. And for kitchen sink's sake,
Don't
touch your face without washing your hands.
And remember, any supplies you bring back from outside during this time could potentially be contaminated. So treat them as such. And if you happen to be one of those who's sick, please, please, please self quarantine. Don't be a dick. Stay home. Keep your distance from others and wash your hands. If you have to go out, wear a mask. This reduces the chances of spreading airborne particles and also serves to let others know that you're sick and keep their distance. Another important thing to consider is that you may not be able to work or bring in any income during the emergency, but you might still have to pay bills. So you're going to want at least a month's worth of expenses available. I know would be difficult for some, but it's always achievable with a little bit of effort and creative budgeting. Now, in a pandemic, you might not have issues with getting utility service, but in a natural disaster, that's a major concern. Water supply and electricity, particularly in the winter, should be considered. Store some treated water in a cool, dry place and have an alternative source of heat and light. Oh, and it wouldn't hurt to have a battery-powered radio on hand to keep updated on current events if the internet fails. But since this is about pandemics, I really won't go into any more detail about that. So finally, let's talk about self-defense. Though it probably won't be an issue in the current case of COVID-19, in a more major emergency situation, it's possible that people will, out of desperation or fear, pose a physical threat to you and your loved ones. Even if they aren't trying to kill you for a roll of toilet paper, individuals or groups might take advantage of the situation to rob you or cause harm to you. We've seen this with the likes of Hurricane Katrina, so you should have a way of defending yourself. The most important part of preparedness is to formulate a plan and carry it out. Don't wait until disaster strikes to start getting ready. Don't think it could never happen to you. History is littered with the bodies of those who thought like that. Create a plan, form a support network of trusted friends and family, and when things go south, remain calm and don't panic. That's it for now. I know this is a bit brief, but hopefully at least provides a starting point. If I've missed anything important or you have your own ideas, I'd like to hear them. Everyone has their own needs and methods for preparedness, so sharing those will hopefully help others to be ready. Remember, try, don't be afraid to fail, learn, and teach. Class dismissed.
Stay safe.